Hundreds of Chinese workers in an African and a European country tested positive with the CCP virus. Before they left China, they were vaccinated with Chinese vaccines. How does the Chinese Communist Party maintain its image among Chinese people? Leaked documents reveal its tricks. European celebrities walk away from Huawei for its human rights record. This soccer player and singer terminate their collaboration with the company to show support to Uyghurs. And a U.S. company submitted fake records to U.S. Customs for tires worth more than $21 million. They evaded paying $6 million in taxes for the goods bought from China. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now to Chinese workers. Hundreds of them tested positive for the CCP virus after they left their country. They had already been vaccinated back in China. Earlier this month, the Chinese embassy in Uganda announced about 50 Chinese workers tested positive for the CCP virus. Now, 2 other countries joined the list. U.S.-based media outlet Radio Free Asia reports in a Central African country, Angola, 16 Chinese workers tested positive last week. According to a journalist's post on WeChat, the Chinese workers living in Angola received a vaccine from China National Pharmaceutical Group before heading to Africa. Another Chinese lady in Angola named Yo confirmed it with Radio Free Asia. She said these workers didn't dare to talk about their situation publicly because they were afraid that other people would cut off contact with them. She added China-funded clinics in Angola don't accept CCP virus patients, and the Chinese embassy hasn't answered questions about the effectivity of the vaccine. They claim the workers didn't obey the vaccination procedures, and this led to the vaccine having no effect on them. Also last week, about 300 Chinese workers in the European country of Serbia tested positive for the CCP virus. Many of them came from China recently and received the same vaccine as the Chinese workers in Angola. This summer, authorities gave 3 Chinese vaccine candidates permission to vaccinate essential workers. This included Chinese medical workers, as well as diplomats, students, and workers sent to other countries. That's even though the clinical trials had not been completed at that time. In November, vaccines were injected into 1 million people in China. Chinese state-run media have not reported a single positive CCP virus case from someone who has received a vaccination in China. And in China, school students may be used for vaccine experiments. A group of parents of primary and secondary school students in Pingliang City got a notice last Sunday. The notice required students and school staff to voluntarily receive the CCP virus vaccine and pay for it. The vaccination fee is about $80 per person to be paid by the volunteers themselves. It is quite a sum of money for people in the poor region. The notice demanded confidentiality, saying it was strictly forbidden to let outsiders know. Zhao Zongyuan, a Chinese doctor from Beijing who lives in Canada, says he believes it is possible that the CCP uses students to experiment with vaccines. He says Pingliang City was chosen because it is located in a relatively undeveloped and remote region in a northwestern province far from Beijing. If the vaccination were to go wrong, he says it would be easier to block the news.
It is also possible that school students are used for vaccine experiment. In remote areas, it is not prone to problems due to the lack of transportation and communication. After any problems surface, authorities can block news. If a problem emerges in Beijing, its influence will be much greater, and it will be more difficult to block the news.
Zhang added the Chinese Communist Party does not treat Chinese people as its citizens with rights. The party is using the people to create benefits for itself. Even if Chinese people want to be vaccinated, they may not have the money for it. Media reports say the price of vaccination in China varies greatly, from about $60 to $1,200, according to Radio Free Asia. Some Wuhan citizens reported the vaccination charge is more than $400 per injection. 3 injections would come to a total of more than $1,200 in total. They said it is not affordable for ordinary people. Some people in Shanghai said medical staff and local hospitals were afraid to sign up for vaccinations, worrying that domestic vaccines are not safe. Shanghai human rights lawyer Peng Yonghe's license to practice law is set to be canceled. Authorities say it's because the law firm will not accept him. But he tells NTD reporter Chang Chun that law firms are afraid of hiring him.
A Chinese human rights lawyer received an official document this month saying the Shanghai Municipal Bureau of Justice intends to cancel his license to practice law. But there was no mention of the reason. The bureau gave him 10 days to submit a defense statement. The lawyer, Peng Yonghe, received a document on December 10th, International Human Rights Day. Peng believes it's because he's represented people who've been treated unfairly by authorities. He said for 3 years he had no income because whenever a law firm wanted to employ him, authorities threatened the firm.
Previously, I found 3 law firms that were willing to hire me. Then they were warned by the relevant departments. Although the law firms already signed a contract with me, they were then afraid to hire me.
Peng said having no income for more than 6 months could also be a reason used by authorities to cancel his license. He publicly announced his withdrawal from the Shanghai Lawyer Association in 2017 in protest to the association being a puppet of the authorities. Since then, he has been harassed by the city's Bureau of Justice and the association. Peng received personal threats. In June last year, Peng went to another province to meet his client, a human rights activist. When he left the detention center, he was beaten by a number of unidentified men and sustained multiple physical injuries. Authorities accused him of having what they called a political orientation problem.
I've been unable to practice my job due to political issues. Now they've finally cancelled my lawyer's license. I'm pretty agitated, but I think what should come will come. Even when you kill all the roosters and take down all the flowers, spring will still come and the sun will still rise.
Peng considers what happened to him an insult to more than 400,000 lawyers across the country. Reporting by Chang Chun, NTD News.
During a crisis, the CCP's method of response is not typical. Instructions from a leaked document reveal authorities need to reduce the hype of a crisis. More on the details from NTD's Don Ma.
In an event of an international incident or crisis, the Chinese Communist Party will try to cover up and downplay severity of the incident. A leaked document obtained by the Epoch Times shows this. The document, dated 2018, is from a foreign affairs office in China's Hubei province. On it are instructions on how to handle an incident that happened between North Korea and China, including how to keep it suppressed. The incident is where 4 Koreans and 32 Chinese nationals died when the tourist bus they were on crashed off a bridge in North Korea. One instruction on the document tells how to keep the incident low-key. It said to limit the public's chatter, tell affected families not to accept foreign media's interviews to avoid hyping up the situation. At the same time, family members who wanted a proper burial service for their relatives were persuaded against it. This is supposedly to reduce exposure of the incident. This downplaying attitude depicted in the document sees parallels to the regime's actions in the pandemic. In the early stages of the pandemic, a Chinese doctor, Li Wenliang, tried to raise public concern on the virus in China. He shared a report on China's lab sequencing of the virus. Authorities soon warned him not to spread information about the virus or face penalties. This happened to 7 other Chinese doctors who also tried to raise public concern. Earlier in June this year, Beijing tested all 10 million Wuhan residents and reported 0 positive virus cases. This result is statistically impossible because all virus testing kits have a percentage of giving false positives. This is especially true for China-made virus kits. In a sample size of 10 million, the odds of having no positive cases is literally 0. In another case, authorities only reported 1/10 of actual diagnosed cases on a particular day. This is according to an internal document obtained by the Epoch Times. The document, dated June, is from a Beijing hospital that had the daily summary of virus test results. On the day, the hospital diagnosed nearly 250 virus cases, but Beijing authorities only reported around 20 cases. Looking at China's actions, it gives credit and consistency to the downplaying attitude that the leaked foreign affairs document depicted. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
MSCI is dropping Chinese stocks on a U.S. blacklist. It's the third major index to make the move, following a U.S. ban on owning the companies.
MSCI is removing 7 Chinese firms from its global indexes. It includes SMIC, China's largest chipmaker, and Hikvision, a surveillance company that provides equipment for China's detention camps in Xinjiang. The White House welcomed the news. A spokesperson said, "For years, American investors have unknowingly financed Chinese communist military companies, which helped the People's Liberation Army threaten U.S. service members. Under President Trump's leadership, this is coming to an end." Although MSCI is deleting the firms from some indexes, it says it will launch new parallel indexes that retain the securities. Last month, President Trump signed an order barring Americans from investing in Chinese companies that support China's military. The S&P Dow Jones and FTSE Russell have also removed Chinese firms to comply with the order. MSCI says it removed the companies based on feedback from more than 100 market participants in the United States and elsewhere. Investors say MSCI's intended launch of new indexes, which retain the stocks, could be useful, but that will depend on how widely the products are taken up as benchmarks. MSCI will cut the firms on January 5th.
Who owns Dominion, the voting system for 2020 U.S. presidential elections? Its ownership structure is under scrutiny after its parent company quickly raised funds before the U.S. presidential election. Some speculate a Chinese entity could be an indirect investor in the company. NTD's Penny Zhou has more.
A fundraising drive by the parent company of Dominion voting system before the election is raising eyebrows. The unusual transaction led some to speculate a Chinese entity could be the indirect investor of Dominion. The voting machine maker was acquired by New York-based private equity firm Staple Street Capital in 2018. This October, Staple Street raised $400 million with the help of UBS Securities LLC. It's a subsidiary of Swiss bank UBS based in New York. There are several unusual features of the fundraising. According to buyout insiders, the private equity firm received the money quickly despite the pandemic-slowed fundraising environment.
The fundraising seems unusual because of the pace and the structure. I spoke with a senior executive at a large hedge fund in New York. He told me that typically private equities, when they want to raise funds, it's like 1-year process.
Instead of having multiple closes throughout a year, Akan says the firm did a one-and-done deal. Her source says that means a single strategic client may have taken up the entire fund.
And when I asked if it's possible to raise a fund quickly, he said that it is possible still if you have one strategic buyer that takes up all the fund. And it seems like it is the case here.
Another unusual feature of UBS Securities, 2 of its board members appear to be Chinese nationals. That's according to the company's profile page on Bloomberg. We reported this on December the 5th. Following our report, these names no longer appear on the company's profile page, raising questions about why. UBS New York did not respond to our request for comment. Akan says it is unusual to name Chinese citizens on the board of a New York subsidiary.
And this raises the question of whether these Chinese people on the board had to approve a transaction that could otherwise not be approved without their presence. So I think this is also a fair question to ask.
The 2 Chinese nationals also serve in positions at UBS's subsidiary in China. One is a board member, another is a senior-level executive. The Chinese regime owns 49% of the subsidiary in Beijing. In an unusual move, that subsidiary also replaced 11 out of its 14 board members right after the U.S. general election this year. That includes the board member who also served in New York's UBS. Another board member, Mu Lina, had been a board member of China Transinfo, a major surveillance camera producer in China. The company provides big data and artificial intelligence to Chinese authorities. Attorney Lin Wood tweeted on December 1st that Communist China purchased Dominion Voting for $400 million. He did not elaborate on the details of the alleged connection between China and Dominion. In response to allegations, Dominion published a statement saying the company is a nonpartisan American company and that they have no ownership ties whatsoever to UBS and the government of China. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A U.S.-based company allegedly swindled millions of dollars in a trade fraud scheme to buy Chinese tires. The U.S. lost more than $6 million in tax revenue. The Justice Department said Tuesday a Texas-based company, Winland International, bought tires from China. Its staff submitted fake records to U.S. Customs and understated the value of tires to evade tax. So the records were subject to a lower duty rate. The trade fraud lasted for a decade, and the value of the tires was worth more than $21 million. As a result, the U.S. government lost more than $6 million in tax revenue. At least a dozen people are facing charges, though 6 of them mainly live in China. All of them work through and with the Texas-based company. The defendants will have to pay $21 million in penalties. U.S. Attorney for Southern District of Texas said China and its industries want to rob, replicate, and replace American-made goods and technology. Now we turn to 2 celebrities who are supporting human rights in China. French national team soccer player Antoine Griezmann canceled a sponsorship deal with Chinese tech giant Huawei last week. He said in a statement it was due to strong suspicions the company has assisted China's suppression of Uyghurs by developing facial recognition technology. He also challenged Huawei to discuss its human rights record. Griezmann won the 2018 FIFA World Cup and earned the Silver Boot Award. For the same reason, a Swedish Olympic swimmer cut ties with Huawei. She is the second Swedish celebrity to end cooperation with the company. Back in August, Swedish singer Zara Larsson canceled her collaboration with Huawei to show her support to Uyghurs. She was originally supposed to promote its smartphones. She described communist China as not a nice state. Larsson is one of Sweden's best-known international singers. Now we look to luxury brands. Makers of luxury handbags, clothes, and jewelry have been hit hard during the pandemic. Revenues have plunged as stores reduce their business hours or close temporarily. Italian luxury jacket maker Moncler is one of them. Remo Ruffini, chief executive of Moncler, told Reuters sales might recover in the second half of 2021. Ruffini is betting on younger consumers and the Chinese market for recovery. Moncler already has multiple stores in China and plans to open 2 more next year. The purchasing power of Chinese consumers might decline this year. China's economic growth is hitting a 4 decades low in 2020, according to a Reuters poll, with a 2.1% projected increase. Some luxury brands believe China's domestic market is set to grow. Travel restrictions mean Chinese consumers stay at home and buy online instead of going to the U.S. or Europe for shopping tours. Hundreds of Chinese Communist Party members work in each of the UK's top 4 audit firms. According to The Telegraph, that includes at least one partner in every firm. NDD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
The Telegraph reports that over 2,000 Chinese Communist Party members worked for the UK's top 4 audit firms in 2016. The paper has access to a leaked document that lists CCP members for the Shanghai area. The list was extracted back in 2016 and verified by a tech group, Internet 2.0. KPMG had at least 400 members in 2016. One of its partners, Yang Jie, took part in the CCP's 19th National Congress in 2017 as a so-called honorable representative. A Chinese government website praises Ms. Yang, writing, "Making the red gene take root in KPMG and passing that on through the generations became Yang Jie's main goal at work." A picture posted online Tuesday shows KPMG CCP members holding up a communist flag. KPMG told NTD it did not wish to comment. The CCP has gone to great lengths to infiltrate foreign institutions. It's also known that companies based in China have to do whatever the CCP tells them to do, for example, handing over personal data of individuals. Deputy Director of the Adam Smith Institute, Matt Kilcoyne, said, "Companies that have benefited from an opening up of the global economy cannot hide behind the local cultures when they're found out collaborating with communism." He notes that China is the world's second largest economy and it's the largest dictatorship. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.